Welcome back to Conservative American Predictions. Today I'm going to be doing a video about if Robert Kennedy Jr. could potentially deadlock the Electoral College come November in the general election. So this would basically be Robert Kennedy's best case scenario winning electoral votes, which I don't think he does as of now, but if he would, could he actually prevent either candidate from winning outright? So this would be kind of that scenario. And the states I have filled out already for either candidate are either safe or likely. And the likely states are mostly because Kennedy either takes enough votes away from both candidates, like in Colorado, for example. I think he would take enough votes away from Biden to make it under 12 points, and New Mexico, states like those. Or in the case of Utah or Maine's first, he would come in second place in these states. So yeah, that's just my take. It would, like in Maine's first, I think it could be under 12 points in an absolute best case scenario, and Kennedy would come in second. That's just my take. Same with Utah. Except Trump would win, Kennedy would come in second, Biden in third. And then also in Hawaii, I think that Kennedy would come in second, probably in a best case scenario for him. But these are still the states that I don't see being like swing states or Kennedy winning. So I'll fill out the states that I think that Trump would win first. Also, I forgot to fill out Ohio by a likely margin. I apologize for that. But then the states that I think Trump wins by a lean margin, those are still Georgia and North Carolina. These states, I think, will go for Trump, basically no matter how the election goes. Kennedy won't have really that much of an influence on these states. For a good example of this, Ross Perot really had no appeal in the South in 1992, but he did very good in places in the Midwest, on the West Coast, and in the Northeast. The South was just one of those places he didn't have much appeal, as his ideology did not match up with many people in the South, and this is kind of how Kennedy is too. So I think basically Kennedy takes maybe 10% best case in these states, and basically very evenly from both candidates. So I think that Trump still wins these states by lean margins. And then after this, the lean states for Joe Biden in this scenario would be Minnesota, and I actually believe that's all. I'll throw in Arizona too, because this is a scenario where Kennedy takes a lot of votes from Trump, where they would be going to Trump, but they are going to Kennedy now. So I think that Biden could win the state by a lean margin, and it would probably be like 2-ish points, because Kennedy again would take those votes that would have gone to Trump. And then we come down to the rest of the states that I think would be very, very swing states that would be important in this election, which are already important. Of course, there are some states noticeably that aren't swing states in this election that I will be talking about in a minute. So I'm going to address the states that I think would be tilt for Joe Biden first. So out of Wisconsin and Michigan, I think that Joe Biden would win both of these states by tilt margins. Wisconsin by under half a point, and Pennsylvania by about a point. They would be similar to 2020 margins, and I think Kennedy could take enough votes away from Trump here that they would go to Biden. Now, I do think that Kennedy does take more votes away from Biden in the Rust Belt as of now, but let's just say hypothetically he took more votes away from Trump because he ran a, kind of more conservative campaign than he is running now. Maybe he does prevent Trump from, winning these states, and they go to Biden. Then after this, the state of Michigan, I think, does go to Donald Trump in this scenario. I think that he could do good enough with the working class still, even if Kennedy takes a lot of votes away from him. Maybe Kennedy takes more votes away from Biden in the state. Maybe it's a state-by-state basis in the Rust Belt. But I do think collectively, RFK will take more votes away from Biden as a whole. But again, in the scenario, maybe he takes more votes away from Trump. Either way, though, I still do think that Michigan is a decent win for Donald Trump. And then after this, in Nevada, I do think that this is a state where it could go either way in the scenario, but I will give it to Trump as of now because I think Kennedy would take more votes away from Biden in Nevada, and this would put Joe Biden at 260 electoral votes and Donald Trump at 268. Now we address the states that could go to Kennedy, and these are Alaska, New Hampshire, Maine second, and Maine at large. So I'm going to start with New Hampshire because I don't think it does go to Kennedy. I think it could be a lean margin, best case, for Joe Biden, but this would be a state that Kennedy would come in second, and then Trump in a distant third. I think that Kennedy could do very good here with more progressive voters, maybe some moderate voters, candidates who were turned off, or people who were turned off by both candidates, people basically all over the ideological spectrum. So Kennedy could do very well here, but I don't think it would be enough to win the state, and this would put Joe Biden at 264 electoral votes. And then after this, the 2nd District of Maine. I do think that Kennedy would actually win this district. This would be a vote taken away from Trump, but it would still be a win for Kennedy. So I think that Kennedy would come in first place here, then Trump, probably Trump, and then Kennedy. I think Kennedy would take more votes away from Trump. So Biden and Kennedy would come out with about the exact same popular vote out of Maine's second, but it would mostly be because Kennedy took more votes from Trump, but he still took enough to Biden where it balances them two out to about the same vote. So this would be a vote taken away from Trump, though, and given to Kennedy. And then after this, the state of Alaska, I also think, could go to Kennedy. And this would be another 3 electoral votes taken away from Trump, giving Kennedy 4 electoral votes. This is a state where I think Kennedy could do very well in rural Alaska, with more Native American voters, some progressive voters, even some more libertarian-leaning voters, as well as some populist voters, and just, again, voters all over the ideological spectrum who are turned off by both candidates. And this would give Kennedy 4 electoral votes. And then the last state, I think, is Maine at large, which Biden, I think, could narrowly win against Kennedy. Kennedy coming in second place, as he would come in second place in Maine's first and win in the second district, which would mean Biden would only narrowly win the state, but it would be still a win for Biden. So this would be the scenario where Biden wins neither candidate wins, but Trump is leading with 268 electoral votes, and Joe Biden is leading, he isn't leading, but he does get 266 electoral votes. And then Kennedy takes those 4 electoral votes. And then what would happen is each state would have their congressional delegation vote on who wins that state. Now, whichever candidate receives a majority of those states, and also it's the top 2, so it would just be Biden and Trump in this scenario. Whoever wins the majority of those top 2 wins the election. So how that would go is, of course, Trump would win states like Texas, he would win states like Utah, Georgia, and North Carolina. He would win Florida. He would win all the states that he already carried. I think he would win except for Nevada, because Nevada does have a fairly favorable map for the Democrats, so there are more Democratic representatives out of here. So Joe Biden would win Nevada, Colorado, and New Mexico as well. Now, Arizona, there are actually more Republican representatives, so Trump would win the state. And after 2024, I think there's going to be 5 Republicans, 4 Democrats, so this would give the vote to Trump out of Arizona. Out of Alaska, this is a state that would have voted for Kennedy. I think it would go to Biden, as Mary Peltola is probably going to win re-election there, and she would vote for she would vote for Biden, as she is a Democrat. Now, out of Wisconsin, this is a state that it's a Republican gerrymander, so there are much more Republicans than there are Democrats, so this is a state that Trump would still win. Then after this, of course, out of Virginia, this is a state that Biden would win. Out after this, New Hampshire, I believe Joe Biden would win still, as it looks like both candidates or both seats will be held by Democrats afterwards, so that is another win for Joe Biden. Now, out of the state of Maine, this is most likely, these 2 electoral votes, they would be meaningless, as would the electoral votes separately out of the Nebraska districts, because they would vote together as a state, so it wouldn't matter, who they would vote for. So out of Maine, it looks like both Democrats are going to hold on. So I do think that it would go for Joe Biden. So in this scenario, you would already have a scenario where it's very close. I'll pull up the state numbers real quick. I have a gubernatorial map pulled up on another tab. So with Hawaii, Colorado, California, Nevada, New Mexico, all the western states, as well as Illinois and the northeastern states, Biden comes out with 19 states, so quite a few for him. However, Trump, with all his states, Biden comes out with 20, forget Alaska. With Trump states, he comes out with a total of, with all the states that he's carried so far, I'm not counting the tilt states yet, he comes out with about 26 states, or 27, I'm sorry. So he would already win the election outright. So these last 3 states wouldn't matter a whole lot, but there is a few things to talk about here. So out of Michigan and Minnesota, these states, they do have a fairly interesting, it would be very interesting, because out of Minnesota, I think that 4 Democrats would win election out of the House and 4 Republicans would win. So I don't know how this would go exactly if there was a tie in the congressional voting. I don't know exactly what would happen, but I think that Minnesota would be a tie, so for the sake of this, I'm just going to give it to Kennedy. Now, out of Michigan, I do think that there are going to be some very close and competitive House races in Michigan come November, but I do think that it is going to be a slight majority for the Democrats, 7-6, so they're going to hold on to that majority. So this would be another state for Biden, so that would put him at 21-26. And then out of Pennsylvania, this is the last state to talk about. I do think that Matt Cartwright's seat does flip in November, so this would give Republicans a majority, I believe, with 9 seats to the Democrats 7, I believe. Or, I'm sorry, to the Democrats 8. So that would be a slight majority for the Republicans. So it would go to a 27-21 majority. I don't know where the other states went. I have no idea what I was doing with them. But that would, it would be 27-22 or something like that. I closed out the other tab already. But then Minnesota would be the tie. So this would be the scenario where Kennedy does deadlock the Electoral College. This is how the map would go when the House of Representatives votes. It would be a very, very narrow win for Trump. He only wins 2 more states, I believe, than required to become the next president when it goes to the House. And it would be very close, but this is how I would see the election going. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Comment down below what you think a sort of best case scenario for Kennedy looks like, if he can deadlock the Electoral College, or if you think he can't. So again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you guys next time.